Okay, in 2006, the USA imported $288 billion worth of goods from China, nearly 3 times up from 2001. The first Mattel recall cost the company $30 million, but this is a gigantic company. As I mentioned before we went to the break, this recall of these millions and millions of toys, you guys, represents less than 1% of what we import from China. So really just a drop in the bucket. And as you said, Dr. Berger, toys that are on the shelves, just because they're not on the recall list, does not mean that they don't also have these high levels of lead. We just don't know it. What are the symptoms that people would have to look for if their child were having lead poisoning?
I am of the belief that any child who has neurodevelopmental delays, whether it's autism, ADD, even seizure disorders, have heavy metal toxicity until proven otherwise. That doesn't mean that they truly all do, but as with anything in life, if you don't look, you don't ask. Part of the problem is, and as was alluded to previously, we have gotten lax as a medical community for testing. We used to be universal testing every child for lead. We no longer do. But even in terms of the types of tests that are available are problematic. It used to be assumed that if a lead level was under 10, that was considered safe. A large study from the New England Journal of Medicine back in 2003 had actually shown that for every 1 point above 0 that a person's lead level went up, their IQ went down 0.9. So they actually would have a 9-point drop in IQ at a level of 10, which was considered the cutoff. So and everything else was taken into consideration. And then they actually showed there was a 5-point loss in IQ for every 10 points after that. So the larger loss of IQ happened at the low levels that were previously considered safe.
Wow. How do you test? I know we're going to talk with you about how to test the toy. How do you test the child?
Well, there's several different tests available. Certainly the one that's the most standard test is a blood level, and I believe that a level that reporting back at less than 10 is not sufficient. We need an actual number. There are other, but that also is probably more representing the recent exposure. When you've been exposed to lead, it circulates in your blood for a certain period of time, but then it moves from there into the bone, into the brains, into various issues.
No, it moved into other areas.
So there are a couple other types of tests that are available. One's called a porphyrin test, a zinc protoporphyrin test, or a coproporphyrin test. One's a urine test, one's a blood test, and this actually looks at damage in the hemoglobin production pathway, that you can have these abnormal substances that are showing up because heavy metals are damaging them.
How do you treat it?
Well, what I do actually is a standard chelation. There's 2 chelating agents that are standardly used, one that's called EDTA, calcium disodium EDTA, one that's called DMSA. The way that I test for heavy metals, because of this issue of it could be out of the bloodstream already, is I will have a patient, I will collect a single urine, I give them a one-time dose of one of these chelating agents, and then I collect another urine right afterwards and collect for 8 hours. And if I see a big jump in the heavy metal compared to before, then I know it's in the body, but it also tells me that the body is storing it. It's not releasing it on its own. It also tells me that that agent works for the removal process, so then I then proceed using that same agent ongoing. There's several different ways of doing it and get the numbers down.
Isn't it? What you've been through with your child and going through all this, the testing, the treatment.
And we're still going through the chelation treatments right now.
Really?
No, yes.
Summer in Winter Haven. Let's take a call. See what you want to know.
Well, what I would like to know, actually, I have 3 children. We have lots of family members. We have, 3 toy boxes filled with toys.
Yes.
I know there's specific toys, and they were, developed at a specific time. I'm going to have to get my children tested, obviously, but how do I decipher this? What toys are what? Also, could this be a terror plot?
Oh, goodness. Wow. I don't know if we have enough time in this half hour to deal with the terrorism aspect, and I know I've heard that before, too. Let's stick with, for the moment, the issue of how does a parent with a toy box full of toys know what to do? What should they do?
I think she already identified the first thing, and that is first check the children. As Dr. Berger said, you need to know what your child, from one of those tests for their pediatrician. And then certainly if there's a positive test in that child, any of those children, then everything in the home needs to be examined. And
okay, so you've got a kit here.
If you wanted to begin the process of answering a question, a commercially available, and this is not perfect, but it's a test that can be done on objects. It's a start. And basically what you do is you rough up the surface.
Hold that up so we can see it. All right.
Not necessarily. I think there are others out there. I'm not
But you
promoting.
can go to one of the
Lowe's, Home Depot, any of those types of places. And essentially what you're trying to do is get down to the material the substance is made of or into the paint. Sometimes they're coated with plastic or another. You got to scrape it down. And then you just apply this strip, and if it changes to a color, then that text doesn't say how much, it just says there is lead in there. And then you'd have to have further testing to determine how much lead. And if you're highly suspicious, even a negative test here does not eliminate the possibility.
It does not mean it's not present. Where does this leave a consumer?
Well, with
Like
respect...
that mom, she's got 3 toy boxes full of toys.
One thing she might want to do in this day and age, often if there's a big class action lawsuit, the plaintiff's attorneys will create a website, and she should start Googling to see if there is a website so she can start to track the progress of the litigation. Certainly, if she's got some toys that are Mattel toys that are covered, she may want to be part of that class and see if she can get a part of a recovery.
And even in terms of exposure, though, I think it's important of understanding how the child is exposed. This isn't something that because it's across the room that you're getting exposed because it's on a shelf somewhere. It isn't because your kid was casually touching it with their hands. It really is an oral exposure. I mean, if you have teeth marks in that toy, I'm concerned about it. So that is an important thing, is how the exposure is happening. It's not in the air. It's not just wafting up into us. But I believe that if a child is of the age where they're putting toys in their mouth, until we have this settled, I'm recommending to my patients, any toy that's made from China that has paint on it, don't let your child put it in their mouth. We have to come up with other solutions, but I can't make that assumption since we haven't tested all these toys.
Well, Lisa, I think your husband was telling me that you think maybe some of the bath toys that Noah chewed on when he was a child.
Right, in the past, that's how they softened the vinyl on the soft books and the rubber duckies and all of that was through a lead agent. Wow. So...
I wish we had way more time to talk about this. We're going to have to take a break on that moment, and we'll be right back. For more information about the lead poisoning programs at the Hillsborough County Health Department, here's a number and a place to start, 813-307-8071. I'd like to thank my guests today very much, Dr. Holt with the Health Department, Attorney Bill Mitchell, pediatrician Dr. David Berger, and Mom Lisa Breakiron and Noah. Thank you so much.